Larry is a CPA, and he's the training supervisor for the Division of Finance. He works with the Financial Information Systems team. It says he's been using and training on Finance since the original implementation, and he has survived all of the upgrades. Mm-hmm. So, great. That's a good word for this last one. In this session, he's going to focus on tips and tricks for using Finance 3.10. So if you're in the wrong class, now's the time to receivables, payables, and types of transactions in general, it says. So. Okay, I've got a roll for each side, and then we'll go ahead, Larry.
Thank you. Okay, as she mentioned, I'm Larry Simpson, and I get to do training on FiNet and also some of the testing and stuff. Now, the description of the class leaves it quite open when it talks about tips and tricks and documents and all kinds of stuff. So, kind of my thought is, when we're through today, hopefully we'll better understand some of the features of FiNet, maybe something that you haven't encountered before, or maybe better to use something you already know how to do, and how to work more efficiently with some of those options. So, how many of you have your cell phone with you today? Okay, usually they say turn it off, don't turn your phone off. You can turn the sound down, but we're going to work you. So first of all, we're going to take a little survey so I can kind of figure out a little bit about the audience we're working with and what kind of things you want to talk about. Now, maybe the first thing I do, I didn't put this in my survey, I'm just curious, how many of you are with the comptroller's office? And how many are obviously from somewhere else? Is that regions, or I'm not sure I know all the terminology. So if you'll get out your cell phone, and we're going to text here. If you'll go to the text chat area and put 22333 as the number that you're texting to, and then in the text area put Larry Simpson 774. When you send that, it should come back and say you have just joined Poll Anywhere, and we're going to do a poll. Now, it's not required for you to get your CPE, CE, whatever, continuing education. You don't have to do this to do that. But it will help me have a little better understanding of who we're working with. And we have time to do it. Don't panic. Now, Poll Anywhere does not charge you for your text. If your carrier charges you for text, I can't help you with that. But what I have control over, there's no charges involved. And by the way, if at some point you find this is an interesting exercise, it's a free app. You can download it. It just goes into your PowerPoint and allows you to do surveys. Now, when we're done, I'll have you type leave in there to get back out, but don't do it until I tell you. I've got a slide that explains that. So, anybody still working on that wants to admit it? That's okay. All right, here's our first one. If you would just type the character and text that in relating to how long you have been working with FiNet. And it takes kind of a minute. We've got 5 of us already have responded. Okay, we'll go with the folks we've got. Okay. Interesting. From our help desk calls to FiNet, we find that people that call the help desk, about 80% of them have been with FiNet 2 years or more, and the majority of them are 6 months or less of the leftover folks. So the last 20% or so, a majority of those folks are fairly new to FiNet. So you're kind of representative of what we have, the folks that call the help desk. And as we kind of analyzed it, it appears to us that in the more than 2 years folks that call the help desk, most of the time it's for a transaction that they don't do all the time. And you do it once a quarter or once a year or whatever. And we help you with that. Or it just might be a transaction that's a little more complicated than you're familiar with. Now, there are some people that will always call in that more than 2 year, and we know who they are, and we still service them, and that's okay. See, our help desk, the main rule at the help desk is we promise not to laugh until after we hang up. So I figure that's about as fair as we can be. All right, next question. Okay, hopefully you can see it from where you are. What's the main functional area that you do in Finet? Assuming that you actually get in. You only get one. Just kind of pick the one that you may spend the most time, or you want me to think that you spend the most time on. That's okay too. And we're not going to have a test on this later, so it's okay. If you made one up, that's fine too. Okay, let's see. Okay, so we have, oh, cool. Big group from purchasing, inventory, okay. All right. Okay, next question. How would you describe your experience with Finet in a couple of words? And you can be truthful here because no one knows what you've put in there. That wasn't necessarily the first one I was hoping for, but that's okay. So this is what we call a word cloud. So the more times a word is used, the bigger it's going to get. And then the other words will kind of form around it. Okay, if anyone is brave enough to tell us, what is the most frustrating part of Finet? What is it that kind of drives that, do you think?
It's not intuitive, very funky how it works and operates. Even with 3.1, it's become more difficult to work rather than easier. I don't think that many of you or anybody that actually created 3.1 sat down with their user bases to really sit down and think what we have to do on a regular daily basis to help us navigate our work on a regular basis.
So what would you do differently? I'm maybe not supposed to be over in front of the microphone.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Personally, obviously I'm not coding anything, and I don't know the inner workings of it, but I make it more intuitive by giving us the options that are available to us,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe even helping us out when we don't do our codes right. And codes are terrible. You have to basically have an inside navigation of what those codes are to get anything accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
Where do we get those codes? Well, we have to call the people who might have those codes.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then on top, thank you.
Don't hold back, it's okay. So if you're doing a transaction, do you typically have, what kind of transactions would you normally be involved in if you were?
DOs and POs.
Okay, DLs and POs. So when someone I guess you get a request from someone to create the document. Do they include with that the coding, or are you supposed to somehow do some mind meld thing and know what to do with it?
Mind meld thing.
Okay.
That's partially
Right.
because of how UDOT works in general.
Mhm.
A lot of people don't know their own coding for one reason or another because they're not told that. So what we do is go on the adventure and find these codes.
Okay.
So, that's.
And you have to find the right combination. There's all kinds of good codes, but they got to go together. Okay.
Yeah, and on top of that, and then,
Okay.
with the DO, with the new shop
Table, yes.
shop table, if I type in a particular item of code, anything that has been used within that code or item will show up. And if you accidentally select the wrong item in the wrong contract,
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden you have two different contracts for one DO. And that's
Okay.
so there's a lot of things that you find out throughout the thing, like, why doesn't this work? Why doesn't this work? I need to do it.
Okay. Fair enough. That's what we need to know if we're going to do better, okay? Anybody else want to admit to the frustrating, and any comments on that? Yes?
This, the whole inventory side of it, just to, since the outlay of the new finance just haven't seen the work ever.
Oh, yeah, we had a real stopper on that for quite a while, didn't we?
It's been hard, because we've had to track our inventory and other measures.
Yeah.
But we still, now we're back on, as things start working better, we get back into it.
Mhm.
We're still finding,
So playing catch up at the moment? So do you see it as, once it's working, any better, or at least as,
well, some of it's working better, we're still having trouble with, like, buying something into the warehouse, if the commodity wasn't set up prior to the
Mhm.
update, we can't buy that commodity into the warehouse.
so we're not able to put new commodities in? Is that part of the issue? Okay. Actually, I wasn't aware of that one. I'm going to just make a quick note on that. Okay. Anything else you want to say before we move on? And if you, yes, please.
It's just with the new upgrade, it's just unexpected errors. It seems like there's just unnecessary steps that you
Mhm.
take. An example is for a DO, you try to get into validate, it tells you requester and issuer, buyer is not, one lines up compatible with something. And you don't really have to do anything other than click on requester and issuer. You see your information's good. You're not changing
Yeah.
anything. All you're doing is clicking on that tab, then validating, then it will.
Right. So what we found in the upgrade is there were some things that, like this, operated differently than we expected from the previous version, and we're kind of working through those. So hopefully we've been able to isolate most of those, and yes, it's a pain, you have to go click the extra click, but at least we've got it working. For a while, we didn't get those working. Now, where you have concerns, will you please call the help desk and tell Ken? Because we collect those, and we try to figure out how we resolve them or what we can do to help. And in some cases, we can do something Utah-based that will resolve some of that. Sometimes maybe it's a matter of we can come out and work with you and understand better how it's working. And we would like to do that. Okay, given the broad context of the description of the course, I kind of put together a list of topics that I thought might fit within the description that was in the syllabus. So things we can talk about some of the 310 changes, things like the user interface, the shopper table. How many of you have played around with the password hint or reset? That's kind of what I would expect, because we still get a lot of calls at the help desk for us to reset their password. And essentially this lets you set up a security question, you answer that, and it sends you a new password so that you can move on with work. Templates, your department works with templates. We could talk about those if you choose. Talk about internal transactions, why we use, which ones we use. The payment documents, particularly the disbursement options section, where you can identify if you wanted to pay it a different day than tomorrow, or if you would like to have the check come back to your department or pick it up or whatever. Payment Plus, one of the options that your vendor can use to receive their payment. We can talk about check canceling versus check cancel replace. We can talk about what's on the check stub. What are your vendors seeing when you actually go to all the work and get a successful payment? Somewhere along the way we'll stop and talk about supported browsers. And we have some new queries in Data Warehouse we can also talk about. So that's kind of the range of things that we can talk about. Now we're going to put you to work. If you would just identify what would be your number one choice of something you'd want me to talk about, and then I'll kind of sort out into the order that we seem to have the most people, and we'll work our way through. Looks like most people are looking up, so we've got about our usual count. Okay. Oh, disbursement options, okay, and data warehouse. Okay, so we'll start with the disbursement documents. Okay, at this point, if you just type the word leave into your text chat and send it on its way, and then you'll get a response back that says you're no longer locked into Poll Anywhere. So it won't send all of your text that you're saying to somebody else out to Poll Anywhere, and we can see it on the word chart. Okay, we're going to talk first about the disbursement options. I'm just going to bring up GACS real quick. So in a GACS, a PRC, or a GMA, in any of the payment documents, in the vendor section, we have a tab or a section for disbursement options. Now, the normal process in FiNet would be that you create the payment today, you get it submitted and approved, and FiNet will automatically process that and the check goes out tomorrow morning. That's just the basic way we do things. The auditors like it that way, we like it that way, so you don't get anybody touching it after it's hit FiNet. So essentially in the morning, all we do is get it to the mailbox, to the post office, and we're done with our documents. Well, it may be that you have a registration where you need to attach the check to the paperwork that goes with it. That's probably the most common occurrence. And in that case, you don't want the check to go without you. So one of the options is to use the handling code field. Okay, I need to edit my document. There we go. And you can use a handling code to tell FiNet to treat it differently. So if you use a handling code of 2, that means it'll hold it in state finance and you send somebody to pick it up. If you choose a code of 3, we send it back to your department. We have a person in your department that is responsible to receive those. They get it, they can get it back to you, and then you can attach the stuff that you want. So those are the 2 options you have. If you leave it blank, it's going to be automatically mailed out. Now, the other options are for other finance purposes, so the only choices you have is 2 or 3 on that one. The other options that you have in disbursement options, part of our processing in FiNet, it's designed for efficiency, which at least should be efficiency. FiNet processes all of the GACSs, the PRCs, and the GMAs, and then during the overnight process, it sorts them out by vendor, and we send one check to each vendor. Now, that's in a perfect world. Now, you may encounter vendors that they get that, they call you up and you spend 20 minutes talking to them on the phone to figure out what it's for. In that case, it's not efficient anymore. So if you have vendors where you have challenges with that option, you can use the single payment box here. If you click that, that means that you will get a check for that particular document. Now, from the Division of Finance standpoint, we like the idea that we send fewer checks, but we also recognize that if it's not an efficient thing for you, it doesn't make sense, so go ahead. It's okay if you click that for the vendors that you struggle with, having them get the right information. The third thing that we support here, there's a bunch of other things that we don't use here in Utah, but the third thing is the scheduled payment date. So I told you that we automatically send the checks out tomorrow for all the processed documents. Well, let's say that you're going to be out of the office next week and there's a payment you normally make. You create a GACS on Wednesday and it goes out Thursday of next week. You could put next Wednesday as your scheduled payment date. The document gets submitted, approved today, and FiNet will just sit on it until it hits that date. So the date you have there is the date that FiNet will recognize it. That night it will process, and then the next day the check goes out. So you can actually pre-program some of your payments if that was useful to you. So those are the 3 things. You can do those before the document is submitted. Now, once the document's submitted, you can't do it from here anymore. We have a special table called the Document Management by Disbursement. It's the DISBMD table that allows you to go and make these changes after it's been submitted, but before we process tonight. And at that table, it's a complicated looking table. For our use here in Utah, the only fields we ever use are these last two on the right. So here you'd put in, if it's a GAX, you'd put in GAX, you'd put in your document ID, and then you would search, do a browse, and it will show you that document.
Larry, does everybody have access to that, all users?
Yes. Yep. Anybody that has access to do payment documents should be able to get there.
What can you change?
Pardon me?
What can you change on that table?
Okay, just a second, and I will show you. The three things that we talked about in the disbursement options section, we can change the handling code, the scheduled payment date, and we can change the single check.
This is after it's submitted and approved?
Correct, but before it gets processed tonight. Everything stops tonight. Once we process, there's nothing else you can do with it. Okay, so let me see if I've got the right document here. Let's see. Okay, now the trick to this table, when you do the browse, it looks like nothing happened. We see data came up here, so I know it's found it. I have to click the results link. And so up until then, you think nothing's going on. So here's the document that I created earlier and submitted and had it approved. And it tells me that I have a scheduled payment date, which is just off the chart. Let me slide it over a little bit. The scheduled payment date today. I have no handling code, and I don't have the single payment is a no. So if I want to change it, then in this area, I make the change. So at this point, I could go up to the single payment and switch it from no to yes. I could change any of those. Then I just click on the document I'm interested in, choose update the selection, get my cursor in the right place, and now my document identifies as yes, it's got a single payment. If you go back and look at your document, it will not change. This table merges with the document during the overnight processing, and it will actually go out with the single check. So this gives you a little bit later, a little more time in the day in case it gets approved and you forgot to do one of those things. Now, another thing that we find on the scheduled payment date is we'll have people call the help desk late on a Friday, and they'll say, I got this problem, all the approvers are gone, nobody can reject it, what can we do? So we'll have them put the scheduled payment date Monday or Tuesday, and then the check won't go. Monday or Tuesday, the approver can come in, reject it, you can make your fix, and you don't have a check that gets away on a Friday on you. Does that make sense?
No, because I thought the approver's already approved it by the time you come in and make these changes.
Right. The approver has already approved it. You can make these changes, and then during the overnight processing, it applies these changes to your document.
Right, so it won't create a check, but then can the approver go and reject it after it's been?
Yes, because nothing's happened to it yet. The check hasn't been issued, so on Monday, when the approver comes in, it's as if they had approved it earlier in the day and it hadn't got to the night yet. So they can then reject it Monday. You can go back, fix it, submit it, reapprove it, and it's ready to go Monday night. I mean, that'd work any day that the approver's gone before you want the document to get away from you.
I didn't know you could reject something you've already approved.
The approver can go in and, let's see,
Unapproved, is that?
let's see, wait a minute. Well, actually, the issue is not the approver can reject it. The issue is that you couldn't modify it and get it approved before the day was over. Excuse me. Let me get the right stuff.
But it hasn't been approved.
Well, okay. So we submit it, it's been approved, you see an error, you would normally just modify that and have them reapprove it, right? Well, you create a modification document, but nobody is there to approve it. That's the appropriate scenario. I apologize for that. And then, so if you leave it that way, it will process the original one and just ignore your modification because it hasn't approved yet. So you can go to the original one, you can schedule it out so that you have time then to modify it on Monday, get it approved, and then get it done. Good correction. Gave you. So we occasionally get those, like I say, Friday afternoon or late on a day when they call and say, you know, what do we do now? And we don't approve things in finance. So if it's at that point, then we just help you push it off to the next day so you can get it fixed. And as I mentioned, if you go at if you change it, you go look at the document, it won't look any different. All this happens when we merge during the overnight process. Okay, any questions on disbursement options? Okay, the next choice is the data warehouse queries. Okay, now before we get actually into the queries, I found a quote that I think applies to the data warehouse in general. It says, unable to find the information or knowledge they need, employees assume that it's not available, so they recreate it or pay someone to provide it, slowing the process of change. So one of the things I would encourage you to do is if you find that you're taking data out of FiNet and putting it in a spreadsheet to do something with it, talk to us. We paid a lot of money for FiNet. We should be able to come up with a way that it will come pretty close to giving you the answer. And through Data Warehouse, you can do some manipulations. Do any of you use the Query Studio part of Data Warehouse? Do any of you use Access or Excel to tie into the tables? Okay. When you use Access, there's some things that you have to use Access or Excel for, joining tables. But when you're doing your query that way, you have to know what table you're looking at and also what field from which table makes the most sense. In the Query Studio, we've already created what we call, I didn't. The Data Warehouse people already created things called packages. So if you're doing disbursement type of query, it already knows what fields apply to disbursements, what coding elements you have or access to, what account types, all that kind of stuff. And so you don't have to make all those decisions before you start. You can go and build your query in Query Studio and just reuse it over again as you need to. So we probably won't have time to look at that this morning, but if you're interested, we do a Query Studio class, or if you want to get a couple of people together and holler, we'll come down and just demo it for you, let you see what kinds of things it will do. For our purposes this morning, we're just going to talk about a new set of queries for the Online Accounting Journal, the Labor Plus, the vendor name lookup, and the warrant queries. We've restructured those queries to hopefully make them a little more efficient or useful for you. So let me jump over to, okay. We anticipate that they will launch the same way, not going through this. Oh, that's nifty. Let me in. Okay. Let me try that one more time. Okay. So the vendor customer query, how many of you use that to query for vendors? Okay, so it doesn't look a whole lot different. We do have, you can search by the name or by the taxpayer identification number still as it currently works. The difference actually happens once we get in. So I'm going to look for a vendor, Utah Idaho Supply Map World. So in the vendor name field, I put Utah Idaho, and I'm going to search for that. And by the way, it remembers your last query just for some reason. So if you were doing it again, you'd be able to find it. So it's going to go out, and it's looking for all of the vendors or customers that have Utah Idaho either in the vendor name or the doing business as name, which is the same as what it's done all along. If it's a vendor, it will have a check mark in the vendor field. If it's a customer, it will have a check mark in the customer field, and then a big X in the other one so you know which it is. The accounting system is designed so that if we choose, we could have one number represent an entity, whether they're a customer or a vendor. In Utah, we've chosen not to do that. If you have an entity that sometimes is a customer and sometimes a vendor, they will have two unique numbers. And the reason you care about that is you're creating a document. If you put a customer number in there, it will look just as valid as any, but you get an error message that says you need a vendor number. And you say to yourself, the number's there. What's the matter with this system? Some of those we just can't help with. You have to get the right number. Now, the real advantage that we have under the new queries is now that I have a group of vendors that meet my criteria, I can now do a search on that subgroup. I can do a nested search. So in this case, I'm looking for Utah Idaho Supply Map World. So if I put the word map over in the search field and then search, it will then give me just those vendors that have the word map, either in any of the fields across. So if I know the address, I could even search by the address over here, and it would find it in that field. So it's the nested search that kind of makes this a more efficient, effective search for vendor numbers. Okay, the Online Accounting Journal, we use that when you're looking for, say, a list of transactions that meet a certain criteria. In the current version, the top half of the screen gives you the fields that you can use to search for data. The bottom half of the screen gives you the fields that you can use to present your data. So in the new version, we have kind of an open field over here for choosing the fields that we want to search by. And then I just add in the fields. So let's say I want to, I'd use, say, department. And then I want it to equal department 100. And I could add another field. Say I want to, let's see, for a unit, 0480. And I want to narrow it down to a certain accounting period. Let's see. At that point, I have to get my glasses. Okay. Fiscal month. There we go. And I'll scroll down. So I want fiscal month of 1. Okay, that now filters my data so I'm not looking at everything everywhere. Then in the next set of fields, I have a list of all of the available fields that I can have in my output. And what I do is I click on one of those and it moves it over into the currently selected. Or if I have a currently selected I don't want, I would just click on that, it'll push it back. So the fields that we see here are the ones that will be in the output of your document. Then all we need to do is do a search. And it will give me a list of all of the transactions that meet the criteria I put into my filter. And it will show all of the fields that I selected to show. So this is not a great deal different than what we currently do. It just gives you more flexibility in choosing your filters and choosing your output. Also, we still have the narrow search here. So you get the group of things that come. You can now query that for a subgroup. We can narrow it down even further if you choose to. So maybe you have a specific object that you want to focus on. In that case, you could then put that code there. You could have built it in originally, but maybe you want to look at the data, then decide what your next step is. Also, let's see, we have, okay, in this particular query, we have, let's see, are they the same? We have 2 entries that are for the same unit, the same object, and maybe I don't care about all the individual stuff. I would like to have it just summarize unique elements. In that case, I can go back up to the top and I can choose the summary box. And it will now, when I do the search, it will group those by the elements that I've chosen. And now I have one summarized entry for the one that we were looking at. Let's see, object. Hang on. Anyway, I don't remember which one we were looking at too, but it summarizes so you don't have to look at all of the entries. So maybe you're looking at just out-of-state travel or some weird thing. You could look at all the individual documents, or you could have it summarize it for you.
How does it know which field to summarize on? Does it summarize on all?
It summarizes across all fields that you are displaying. So you can,
Can you export this?
yes, good question. Okay, in the export, this button right here is the export button. And I'm trying to remember, it highlights when. I was just playing with this yesterday. Let's see. Okay, yeah, this will come up and say export. I'm not sure why. Let's see. I have a message up. Oh, I have to undo. Oh, okay, we had to allow that. There we go. Now we got it. Okay, it was a plug-in issue. So now we click here, and it gives you the option to download that, and you can work with the data in your spreadsheet or whatever. The same works for the Labor Plus, the labor detail file. So when payroll passes stuff to FiNet, it converts hours and people into dollars and the FiNet coding. That's what you get on the accounting journal. In the labor detail journal, you get the hours and the dollars. You don't get people, but you get hours and dollars so that you can then kind of coordinate with what you're looking at from payroll. Again, we would choose our different filters, choose which fields we want, and you can then search. You can do a nested search. It works exactly the same as the labor accounting journal. We then move out into the warrant queries. And essentially, they just take on the same format that we've seen before. So if you have an invoice number, you put all or part of it here. It then gives you the information down in here. You got the invoice number, it'll give you the check number. It'll bring down the invoice number. If the check has cleared the bank, it'll give you a bank cleared date, or if the EFT's been issued, it will give you the date of the EFT. And then it will give you the, here's the EFT effective date. Then here's the rest of the information for the transaction. So it works pretty much like the current one. We also have the nested search, so once you get your output, you can refine that and look at just part of that if you want to. Let's see, if you know the check number, it works the same. The vendor number, we have fiscal year and we have vendor number as part of the search. You have to put both of those in. And you say to yourself, we don't set up vendors with fiscal years. The fiscal year field is just to make sure you don't get 10 years of data instead of 1 year at a time. So if you need to go multiple years, you'll have to do multiple queries. You'd have to export them and package them. But it does keep you from spending all day waiting for it to give you 10 years of data based on, or 10 years of transactions based on what you've put in here. Let's see. Okay, we can do it by the vendor name. We can do it by the document number. Okay, in the current system, we only give you 11 digits. You can now search for your document by the department and all 15 digits, or you can do it by just the document number. It'll accept all 15. That's probably the biggest thing on this one is we can now look for 2016 documents. So those are the things that are available in the new query. We anticipate this is going to be available Monday. We finished our testing. They gave me the okay to talk about it. And we expect that you'll access it. Let's see, let me find. You'll basically access it from the same page, and we will have the original ones will still be available until the end of December. We don't want to make everybody suddenly tomorrow have to change their life. So you'll have two sets of icons, one set for the new version of the queries and another set for the old ones. You can choose whichever is most comfortable for you. Okay, the next stop was the changes for 310. Okay, and because we're plugged into the projector, it changes the resolution and it leaves part of the screen not showing. Let's see, I need to get back to. Do you guys use the jump to when you have to go look, say if there's a budget or look to see a vendor number, well, probably a budget, or look for a code, rather than closing the document and going out to the table and finding it and then going and doing there. If you use the jump to, you can leave from within a document, go do your research, close that, and it brings you back into the document. Just saves you some time. That works the same way as it did previous to the upgrade. Okay, so the home page, the document catalog really didn't change much. We got different colors. You can decide whether you like their color option or not. The main change happens when you get inside of a document. So in the previous version of FiNet, we had the navigator on the left, which is still there. It just opens with the navigator closed. You can open it if you choose to use it, and you can select the different sections using the navigator. If you don't want the navigator and it happens to be open, just close it. And the sections we now call ribbons. And so we have the same composition as we had on other documents, but now we have ribbons, and so we select by the ribbon if you have the navigator closed. And when you select a ribbon, for example, if I click on the vendor, it now opens the vendor section, and it moves the ribbon up to the top and turns it orange so you know where you are. Another nice thing about the ribbons, in the ribbon it tells you what you're looking at. So in this case, I'm looking at vendor TV specialist. I'm looking at accounting line 1, and the dollar amount for accounting line 1 is $120. So right off I can I understand where I am within the document and what I'm looking at. So as we were analyzing 310, we know one of the things that we'd asked for, and I'm going to take just a second to backtrack quickly. The software we use from CGI, the driving force of change, they have an oversight body that is elected from the different sites. So there's a lot of states and local governments that use their software, and the steering committee is elected from those folks. And my boss, Jerry Gearhart, has been on the steering committee at different times. And everybody funnels their requests up to the steering committee, and they kind of sort through them, and they vote based on their site's experience, and that's what we get. So we were excited to see. One of the challenges that we've all encountered is having the validate and submit off the screen. You have to scroll down. So we spent a bunch of money, and we put function keys in, so you didn't have to do that. Well, when we saw the buttons were going to be back, we thought, well, we can save some money, and we didn't do the function keys. So if you hate us, that's why. We thought, since it's always on the screen, you could get there, and we could spend that money on something else. So those keys, the buttons for validate and submit are there. The things that used to be in the navigator, such as document reference, you guys use document reference to go out and look. That's now on the action menu, the drop down. These are all the things that are no longer on the menu. So we haven't lost anything. You have the ability to not do that. Let's see. No, get me out of there. Okay, somewhere here I can get out. Where's my, back up, there it is. Okay, thank you. Okay, and we can add attachments from down in the file area, close the document here. The print process has not changed, unfortunately. So yesterday, we had mostly comptrollers folks here, and we were talking about the things that they were struggling with. So the print process, in an earlier version of FiNet, it didn't keep the documents on the document catalog. We purged it every 2 weeks because it wasn't designed to keep them. And so we created a process so that you could print the documents in bulk, and they would only print after they'd been approved. So that's how the auditor would determine that the documents were approved when they did the audit. When the new version came out, as we were looking at it, it stored all of the documents kind of forever. And so we looked at it and we said, well, our original reason for creating this easy print so the auditors would have something to look at isn't really valid anymore, and we don't think anybody's going to want to print if they don't have to do that. So we just went with their native print process, which is really awful, thinking that no one would print, and we find out that people print. Do you guys all print? So you print because...
I usually save it as a PDF. They have to go through print. And we do
Okay, so then what do you do with the print after you print it, or the PDF after you create it?
Send it to the vendor, or send it to a person that's going to receive the product.
Okay, so you're talking about the purchase order side. Okay, got that. On the payment side, what do you do with your documents? Okay, and scan them in. Okay. I'm sorry, pardon? Okay, make it easier for the approver to see what's going on than having to look through it. Okay,
We don't have individual scanners in our desk.
okay.
So in order to add a document to every task.
So do you have a document management system that you're scanning into? Okay. So I was talking to my boss, to Jerry, about this morning. I said, maybe we need to talk to people and find out a little better why they're printing and what we can do. He said, you know, this is what you always get. The next, he just came back from a conference with the software vendor. The next version actually has a point and click kind of a print. You pick all the ones on the list and say print all of these. That's not going to happen this year or next year. But there's always something in the future, right? For now, we're probably going to be contacting folks and kind of figuring out what your needs are and see if we can make something work. So that's all. No promises there, just do what we can. Okay, so we're going to close out of here. So those of you that are doing DOs or PRCs are using the shopper table. So tell me, okay, you've had some challenges with the shopper table. How about you guys? I don't see it as a whole lot different than the old table we used to do. Is it more cumbersome because you have to add the shipping and billing codes on a payment? Pardon me?
Can you go to a shopper really quick?
Sure.
Here we go, buddy. Here we go. I've been waiting for this moment since 3:10.
Okay.
Go ahead and search for Lowe's. Let's start this off right. Lowe's spelled L-O-W-E-S.
Okay, so if we're looking for a master agreement, I usually delete all the other stuff and just look for master agreement, or else it gives you all kinds of stuff that you can't use. Let's see, I'm in our training area. I wonder if we have. No. Let's see. Hang on a sec. Let me get over into regular Finet.
There's a reason why we had you look for Lowe's, and the reason is that there's two entities of Lowe's with the same master agreement number. One of which can't be used, the one that needs to be used, but in the same sneaking number. I've been told that you could not delete the one that's no longer valid.
Oops, excuse me, getting ahead of myself. Sorry, I'm trying to listen and do some at the same time, and I'm not very good at that. Okay, so when you put in Lowe's, it gives you the contract that you can use and the one you can't. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I've been told that you can't delete the one that's no longer valid for reasons. And that's basically it.
Okay.
So my first question on that is, why can't you delete the one that's no good? Why can't we just move on to?
What happens is we have people that aren't aware of that issue and trying to buy off of the wrong one. And then they get all the way to the end of their DO.
Oh, and then it says you can't do that, right?
So you wasted all that time.
Okay, I don't know the answer, but I can find out for you. Okay.
Do you want his name so you can call him?
What's that? Yeah, leave me your card or your name before we go, or I'll get a copy of the roll or something. Or if you want to call into the help desk, no, you're welcome to do that, or you can just let me know and I'll call you back. I'm just trying to figure out the easiest way for you to make connection. So essentially, do you guys just use the search field and skip the rest of them?
Yeah, so we just do search field and we find the items that we need.
Yeah.
Using the source that obviously, we sometimes will hone in on to the particular commodity code too. Because there'll be hundreds obviously. And that's
Right.
So we'll hone in on to a particular commodity, select the commodity. My other question is on this particular page is the SCML. So on DOs, I'm assuming that you cannot input price on each line on this particular page, correct?
Correct. Here you're just choosing the items or the dollar amount that you want to deal with, depending on if it's an item or a service contract.
All right, so if it's not a service, no price.
Right, you just pick in the item. You won't get a price till you get into your document.
And that's fine. But these are the type of things that I'm kind of questioning why we even upgraded. Why wouldn't it block that out if it's not going to be a service contract? Is there any way for it to kind of be, I know FINA is mainly a accounting program, but we also use it for
Mhm.
reporting. So when we do stuff like this, it's really cumbersome.
So is the issue that you want to know whether it should be an item or a service from here, or?
No, so, I forgot my initial question on this.
Oh, it worked. I talked long enough. No, I'm just joking.
So if you enter any of these items at this point,
Mhm.
quantity 200.
Sure.
And then go to, add this to cart. And then you select the proceed to checkout. Now, it's going to ask you to enter your shipping location, billing location, and stuff.
Correct.
I have to do all that over again. This doesn't
You're
do
doing this twice.
I'm doing this twice.
So why do you have to do this? Okay, when you get in the DO, it doesn't pull that into the shipping billing, does it? Do you use the default shipping and billing so it pushes it out to your whole document?
Help me here, what do you mean by that?
Okay, in the header section of your DO, there's the default shipping and billing, then you then you go into, when you're done with your commodities, you just say push it out, and it'll go to all your commodities at once.
Are you talking about the DO itself that I created?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the DO pulls in, say, 10 commodity lines.
Yeah.
And in the header, you put default shipping and billing, and then you can click a link that says push it out to all my lines, and I don't have to enter it anymore.
And I do that.
Okay.
This particular line doesn't even work. This one here, I enter and
Oh.
just,
And it doesn't bring it into your DO.
Right.
Correct. And you think that's annoying. It's even more annoying for the payment people who didn't used to have to know that at all. So, yeah, we're kind of working with that one also.
and then if we go further deep into this thing, one of the problems that we have nowadays, and we used to have in the past, if I'm a creator of a DO or PD or DO, I feel like if there's an error that I have created or price was incorrect or something, why can't I go back into it and change that price nowadays? Whereas before 3.1 I could.
So you're in your DO. Did the dollar amount come wrong from the contract?
Yeah, say for instance I fat fingered it
Mhm.
or whatever might be the case, so I'm like, oh crap, I gotta create this and fix it before it processes. So once that happens, I can't change that unless I zero out the line item, create a new line item, and then enter the correct price. My question is, why can't I just change the price rather than go through all those stupid steps?
Can we get together and talk about that? I'm not familiar with that issue. I mean, I don't know all of them. I know a lot of them because I read a lot of the stuff that comes on the help desk. But can we talk about that? I'd like to understand that a little better. So that's the shopper. Warts and all. Shipping and billing is kind of annoying here.
The delivery date always has to be the correct date.
Yeah, and we've talked to the guys about that, and they're it's on it's.
Can I just default to today's date? I mean, why do you have to-
Yeah, so they're going to make it be today's date. That'll just default, not annoy us, right?
It's not the right date.
Yeah, yeah, I know. We've got an issue with them to get that fixed. Yeah, that's one of those things. All I can say is we've done what we can. Okay, just be aware in the administrative. Let's see, where are we? Over here, administration. You can, if I get there, you can put in a password hint so that if you forget your password, you tell them, your mother's something or other, or birthplace or something, and it will then send you a new password so you can continue working. And you don't necessarily you don't have to call the help desk for that.
That's been nice to not be locked out so many times.
Yeah, and we did get the lockout fixed. That was a real annoyance. Okay, our time is pretty much up. Let's see if there's anything that was really critical for. And we will be out of your way shortly. Okay, the check stub, we fixed that so it'll have the whole 15 digits of your document number. And in the check stub, you'll have the department number, your document number, and then you have 59 characters to say everything you want your vendor to know. Up to the first 30 will be the invoice. The remaining digits will be your line description. And it's important to remember that
So 29 characters of the line description is what you just said.
the line description plus invoice is 59 characters. So you subtract whatever your invoice length is, and that's what's left. The important thing is as you're typing it into the line description field, don't tab or enter to make it look real nice in your field. Just run it, because as soon as you hit the tab or the enter, it stops, the brain stops, and it only puts that first piece in. So you just have to remember to let it go around. Let's see. If you cancel a check, it doesn't put the money back onto the contract. If you do a cancel replace, well, if you're going to replace it, you do a cancel replace, it puts the money back on the contract with the cancel and then takes it out when the next check is automatically generated for the replace. But if you just, on check replacement, if you just do a basic cancel, it doesn't go back on. Payment Plus is one of the options that your vendors can choose. U.S. Bank came with an offer with the state that they have a deal where a vendor can sign up with them and they get a credit card type of account. And when the payment is made by the state, it goes through U.S. Bank and they just put money on the credit card and they can use it to buy stuff. The challenge, they get a charge for that. It's like a credit card charge when they do that. And so hopefully your vendors figure that out. So they get charged, the state makes some money, and that's why we do it, okay? Now, in our view from finance, we don't know why people would use that, because you can do EFT and it's free and it goes right to your bank. But if somebody's doing Payment Plus and they call and ask you a question, they should get them to the help desk. Everything that we send to U.S. Bank and to the vendor says call the help desk, because we know what to do with it once we get to the help desk. And if you have a vendor that calls and says, it calls you instead of the help desk and says, I don't want this payment because it's a lot of money and it's going to take all of my profits, then you get them to the help desk, we back it out, we send them a check. You know, we had, early on, we had a car dealership that apparently the state bought a bunch of cars and the payment was going to them that way, and they said, we just lost all of our money. And so we hurried and backed it out and cleaned it up for them. Okay, supported browsers, last stop. Noticeably missing from the list is Chrome, because things look kind of weird on Chrome and don't work exactly right. Internet Explorer 8, 9, 10. Firefox, from the vendor it says 17 ESR, but we don't use the enterprise version of it, so you're in your 40s, you're probably okay. And Safari on your iPad. Okay, I've taken you over time, I'm sorry. If you have any more questions, feel free to call the help desk or call me, and we'll be happy to work with you. And on the issues where you're unhappy about something, talk to us and call the help desk. Ken will log it in. We'll get a crew to look at it. We'll see what we can do. We can't do everything. It's not going to be a TurboTax. You know, you're not going to be able to just answer questions and suddenly be there. But, you know, yes?
One quick question. On Finance monitors the vendor code and invoice numbers.
Oh, yes.
To stop with, you know,
We're looking for duplicate payments.
payments.
So,
We have the issue with P cards.
okay.
It's being paid on P cards. It doesn't pick up that invoice number with the P card. So we have to monitor that separately.
Okay, so the IET that you're getting doesn't have the vendor invoice number on it, is that what you're saying? So then you're trying to, okay, so where, are you looking for the invoice number, or are you, if you have a business card you want to leave, or?
I'll wait for you, Chris.
Okay. So help me understand where, the challenge is that you're not getting an invoice with that?
Well, you can pay it with normal payment process.
Mhm.
Find out the monitor, but then someone else would have paid it with using the P card.
Okay, so,
Monitor does not see-
so it's not seeing the duplicates on the P card because we're not doing that vendor number, line number match. The thing there, really, it comes to when you reconcile your P card to your invoices. You know, that you do that when you do the payment. That's where we're expecting that control to happen.
But you wouldn't know if someone has paid it with gas, and then you turn around and pay it on a P card.
Oh, okay.
That's a hard thing to do. And then sometimes a month or 2 months different.
Mhm.
They've been in there and this takes around, and P card is out there.
Interesting question. Okay, I'll take that up and see what I can find out. And if you want to call into the help desk, that'll make sure I don't forget before I get back. And that's fine. Okay, thank you. Again, if you have questions, please call us. We'd like to know what things aren't working so we can help.
This is my email and my financial log out. I can help. This is my name, Julian Ren. So this is last name.
Okay.